Right, good afternoon everyone. Thank you for coming along, and today I'm going to be going over how we have streamlined and automated data contribution to the Australian National Bibliographic Database using the Open Archives Initiative Protocol for Metadata Harvesting. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the country along the Yarra that we're meeting in today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues here today. Before getting stuck into the meat of the paper, the story of bulk data contribution begins as the tale of two systems, the ANBD as part of Libraries Australia and Trove. The Australian National Bibliographic Database, or ANBD, celebrated 40 years of shared data and resources in 2021. Starting in 1981, when Mad Max 2 released and mobile phones in the few places available internationally looked more like a CB radio, bulk data contribution to the ANBD started with leased line telecommunications, and each decade's featured technology and workflows that have since been superseded. In 2006, when Kenny was in cinemas and the Motorola Razr was the coolest phone around, the online option of Libraries Australia went live. The focus continuing to be on MARC records, which as of today is a data standard over 50 years old. Trove is a much younger service. The National Library's Harvester is used to collect and transform data using OAI-PMH queries, and is optimised for automated bulk data transformation and processing using XML. It went live in 2007 when Romulus My Father came out, and the Nokia N95, which was not a mask, was the hot new phone. Trove launched publicly in 2009 and was designed to connect the mostly for storing and displaying Dublin Core metadata records. Attempts had been made to connect the Harvester to the ANBD in the early 2010s. Unfortunately, our staff at the time didn't have the knowledge or experience, and it fell off pretty quickly. So we begin right at the end of 2019 and early 2020, where, who can remember what was in cinemas? We were all looking towards isolation and streaming from home on an iPhone. The story begins with Trove and the ANBD operating independently with their own separate processes for bulk data contribution. So to give some context, I'll start with the ANBD. Bulk data contribution to the system could only be handled by contributing MARC files through the Record Import Service, or RIS. So in this diagram, the areas we're focusing on are in the blue box there. The computers represent automated processes, the head and shoulders those where manual intervention is required. So while some libraries are lucky enough to have most of the bulk data contribution process automated, many have to take the manual route. For data contribution in RIS, a library will pull MARC files of updated records out of their ILMS. These are then loaded to RIS either through an FTP file drop or a manual HTTP upload. Each library has custom processing steps set up in RIS with transformations often looking at single fields, subfields, or other coded data. The initial setup for bulk contribution could take weeks of work backwards and forwards between the partners and National Library, and sometimes even having to rope in the platform vendors. And any system changes would mean that processes would need to be rebuilt, and errors in individual records often needed hands-on processing either by Trove staff or the partner library. To add to the complexity, the storage of the data once it reaches the ANBD is done in a proprietary version of MARC, just needing additional specific training and documentation. So because not all systems support automated exports, many partner libraries would undertake a large-scale and time-intensive full refresh every couple of years. But in between refreshes, their data would be out of date, impacting interlibrary loan services and visibility of their collection. So in 2019, bulk contribution to the ANBD was non-standard and needed a high level of manual intervention throughout the process. So another quick aside for the story ahead, the Open Archives Initiative Protocol for Metadata Harvesting, OAI-PMH, has been around since 2002 in its current form, and has been supported by the NLA Harvester since it was built in 2007. OAI-PMH is a standard designed for automation in an online environment. This slide shows a very rough model of how OAI-PMH works. after the initial setup, the manual interventions take out of the process. So on a regular schedule, the harvester asks the partner server if any records have been modified, added or deleted since we last looked. Those records are then supplied in extensible markup language, XML, which can go through more complex but automated transfers than MARC files. This allows us to standardize formatting, add conditional checks to the data, and add, modify, or delete fields as needed. And we just need to set it up once for everyone. So OAI-PMH lets us take records in a range of formats and normalize them ready for loading to a database without hands-on work every time. So with the background and scene setting out of the way, we come to November 2019. The Sydney Mechanics School of Arts, one of our smaller partner libraries, was trying to add their holdings from their Koha system to Trove. Unfortunately, they had quite sparse records and didn't have a systems librarian on staff, which kind of needed for setting up bulk contribution through RIS. After several months of work trying to extract a MARC file to load their records to the ANBD, we'd had no luck. And then the work was handed to me as the newbie in the area. From my time in Trove, I knew that Koha supported OAI-PMH, so we proposed to Sydney Mechanics that we attempt to use their OAI-PMH endpoint to load the data. Because we'd been going for months with no success, they were willing to lend a hand and help us try something new. By the start of December, we'd set up a very basic OAI-PMH call, which would become the foundation of things to come. We filtered the collection down to only the items they wanted to contribute, cleaned up some MARC fields that would cause problems later on, and then set up a light touch RIS profile to process those records into the ANBD. The results from this initial process were not spectacular. We got just over 50% of the records to load and match in the database. As the records were quite sparse, we were hesitant to load them as new bibliographic data. Sydney Mechanics was, however, happy enough with this as a start point, as 50% is better than nothing. But from this, we could already see further improvements to how we were processing it. From this mild success, we expected that we would need to set up a separate process for each ILMS to enhance the processing and transformation to improve that match and load rate into the ANBD. The opportunity to build on those small foundations and expand OAI-PMH for bulk ingest came a bit sooner than anyone in the team expected. As we were tinkering with that single partner load, we were contacted by Public Libraries Victoria Network, PLVN, who needed to migrate and refresh 47 of the member libraries in the ANBD to support interlibrary loans. Because of the number of libraries involved, the old RIS process could have delivered a single refresh, but no ongoing maintenance, and realistically not within the time frame available. Whereas moving to OAI-PMH would get a better payoff keeping everyone's data up to date with daily synchronization, and luckily most of the libraries were using a small number of ILMS platforms. So with Koha already supporting OAI-PMH, we reached out to other vendors to discuss testing or developing support. Those with Australian development and support teams proved particularly responsive. Our thanks to Spidus, Cersei Dynex and Libero as the first off the mark to work with us on embedding OAI-PMH for bulk data ingest to the ANBD. These platforms also accounted for the majority of the libraries in that PLVN group. As the PLVN libraries had a core focus on up-to-date holdings for interlibrary loans, we focused our initial development efforts on processes to get holdings into the ANBD more than full bibliographic records. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we initially expected to create a separate process for each platform, and the early development work was all heading down that path. But have you ever had the wild moment of inspiration? I woke up one morning at 2 a.m, like this pair tend to, after having spent the best part of a week staring at the RIS matching processes in detail. Only a handful of fields were being used for matching, and from the data I'd seen in examining the various ILMS feeds, they were generally pretty consistently recorded across systems. So could we run all the platforms through one process? I wrote the idea down to see if it still made sense in the morning, as those 2 a.m. flashes of inspiration are often just nonsense when you read them again, but it still made sense. So I ran it past a few members of the team who also thought it was a good idea, and we had nothing to lose. So after a couple of quick tests, we realised we could actually have one process to run them all. So we now get to the details of this new process that we set up and what's really become our default practice for loading data to the ANBD moving forwards. So OAI-PMH Daily Update lets us run a much more automated process, freeing up staff time for everyone involved to either try something new with their time or press on with other duties. So while the partner ILMS end doesn't change and the last steps into the ANBD are still routed through RIS, the exciting part of the workflow is the bit in the blue box in the diagram where we've integrated the harvester. We run a two-stage process for libraries we are loading. The first stage loads holdings only where a bibliographic record already exists in the ANBD. The second stage then loads a new bibliographic record where we couldn't find an existing item. The basics of each are the same, there's just a bit of variation in the specific fields output by the harvester and loaded to the ANBD. To start with, we filter the OAI-PMH data to only those records the partner wants to make available. OAI-PMH sets are our first preference and entirely controlled by the partner. Alternatively, we can filter based on data in the record, such as material types, keywords in holding statements, or anything like that. And excluded records are often things like toy libraries, devices, or temporary items on loan. It really varies wildly by library practice. So I'm about to get into a bit of MARC detail, so my apologies. For bibliographic records, we do a quick check to ensure that there is at least a creator, publisher, or author recorded between the 100, 110, 111, 260, 263, or 264 MARC fields. Without something in at least one of those, we won't be able to load the records as there's nothing to tell if it matches to existing items or not. Selected MARC fields then go through some standardization to improve matching and try to reduce bad merges. The 008 gets checked for correct length and normalized if needed. In the 020, the ISBN is cleaned, stripping spaces and punctuation in the 020A. This improves searching and matching later on. And any additional information included in the 020A, such as format or price, gets moved to the 020Q. In the 035, system control numbers are removed from the incoming record. 035 is a highly trusted match field in RIS, and our testing showed that its use is quite inconsistent and often accidentally included in copy cataloguing, leading to a significant increase in false matches and merging of unrelated records. If the record includes a 300 and 338 format and carrier type, we keep those, with the 338 getting standardised into English. If they're not supplied, a basic entry is created for each based on the leader and the 008. We create an 850 holding statement for loading to the ANBD. The A is the organisation's NUC, the 850B is the OAI-PMH record identifier, and the C is the call number where available, otherwise we default to held. Other fields are available to give finer detail on enumeration and chronology, but no one's taken us up on that just yet. 880 fields are only retained where the linked field has also been kept. And for format-specific fields like the 255, 362, and 533, if the leader indicates that it's the correct material type, we will keep them, otherwise we take them out. Beyond these, the holding stage just loads a very stripped-down record, including just enough information to get it to load to the ANBD and get the holding in. In the bibliographic stage, we load a much more comprehensive record. Even on this automated model, you can probably see why we prefer to just have to set this up once rather than a custom build for everything. So an ongoing issue in the ANBD has been poor matching of records. So a mistakenly copied 035 on the left matches it into the middle, a typo in an ISBN matches the central record off to the right, and now we've ended up with the very best of The Little Prince by Machiavelli. Terrifying generation of children, but a great soundtrack. Because we have a bit more control in the harvester than the old RIS process, we built a set of matching rules to get our new holdings to load to the correct ANBD record. To do this, the harvester queries the ANBD with a basic bibliographic information and format to find potential matching records, and where results are found, we examine and score each result. They get 4 points if the publisher name, publication details, and date all match, 3 points if date and either publisher name or publication details match, and 2 points if only the date matches, a single point if only, and 1 point if only the publication details match. A 001 with the ANBD identifier gets added, from the top rank result, gets added to the record to force it to match. If more than one record gets that top score, we pick the one with the most holdings. So RIS occasionally will load a new record if there are too many potential matches. So this way we can force it to go onto the one that we want. If there were no similar results in the ANBD or none of the records could achieve a score, then no 001 is included with the incoming holding and it gets loaded through the more comprehensive bibliographic process. With extensive testing and review, we found that depending on the individual library, we'd get between 95% and 100% of records matching into the ANBD through this process. And as the ultimate test, when we reran the harvest of the sparse records from Sydney Mechanics, we went from just over 50% matching to just over 90. A pretty solid improvement, and we've since worked with them to help get that match rate up even further. So for all that technical work, where are we as we approach 3 years of embedding OAI-PMH Daily Update? This first diagram shows how many libraries we have contributing bulk data through OAI-PMH Daily Update each month. Starting at the left there in December 2019 through to May 2022 on the right. 7 months after that first test library, we had 37 libraries contributing this way. 12 months on, so December 2020, we had 128 libraries contributing through OAI-PMH. And now we have 177 contributing their holdings every day to the ANBD through OAI-PMH, and more coming. In particular, the work to date has impacted public libraries, giving them much more up-to-date holdings information. This second diagram shows the record updates from the public library sector by year, and the green line is when we introduced OAI-PMH. As you can see, before it was introduced, we received somewhere between 2 and 4 million holding updates a year from the public library sector, and these were mostly in the form of one-off data refreshes, as the systems and workflows didn't really support frequent data updates. Since we've moved to OAI-PMH, it really is a mouthful, you can see we are handling over 10 million updates a year now, ensuring their collections are accurately represented in the ANBD, making life easier for end users and interlibrary loan officers. So in embedding this new process, we did learn a few important lessons. First is the value of actually building and improving our relationships with the vendors to support technical solutions. So Koha was compatible out of the box. We worked with Spidus, Libero and Cersei Dynix for the first 6 months, which really gave the project some momentum and has inspired some real change. And this has since extended to Aurora, Liberty and Alma, and discussions are ongoing with several other vendors. Those with Australian-based support teams have been particularly helpful, and we've worked together to test and develop solutions to support the needs of partner libraries, Trove and the vendors themselves. Secondly is the value of the snowball effect. Not everything needs to start off as a big planned out project. The use of OAI-PMH to bulk load records to the ANBD began as a test to try and assist a single organisation. But in less than 18 months, it developed and expanded to become the default path forward for what we do in managing bulk data. And finally, it highlighted the value of having the right people at the right time to combine skills, systems and experience. The previous attempt at using OAI-PMH to load to the ANBD was unsuccessful. Staff didn't have a lot of experience with the technology. The library sector, not hugely comfortable or familiar with OAI-PMH for their bibliographic data, even though it was in use for digitised and research collections. And most of the ILMS platforms were locally hosted, meaning you had to have local systems knowledge and experience to establish and maintain the connections. This time, with a decade's experience on using OAI-PMH from Trove and ILMS platforms having shifted from local setups to vendor-hosted and cloud-based solutions, we were able to leverage all of those factors together to embed the new workflows and find the efficiencies. So just because it's failed previously doesn't mean it won't be worth looking at again. So with change, what comes next? The move to OAI-PMH for bulk data ingest to the ANBD really highlighted the need for continuous improvement and development on our end. So we're not stopping and are still tweaking setups and investigating options. We've recently expanded our workflow to libraries that actively catalogue, modifying the process to better support those libraries who have greater in-house cataloguing capability to contribute new and enhanced records, and extend the focus beyond holdings. And while OAI-PMH is new in comparison to the 50-plus-year-old MARC and Z3950, it's still 20 years old itself. So we are looking into other more recent standards that might help us extend our service. Things like search and retrieve by URL, so SRU, particularly the record update function that could potentially allow for near real-time updates to the data sets. And we're also looking into what metadata we capture and display to see if we can show more details such as circulation availability to better support libraries and library users. And at that, any questions? If you don't have any now, but something pops up in future, or your library would like to get set up for OAI-PMH, you can contact Trove Collaborative Services through trove.nla.gov.au/contact. Or for questions about the paper, feel free to email me at the details on the screen, and I will be here until the end of the conference, so you can also hit me up on the floor.
We do have questions, so thank you. Will you work with other LMS vendors to create OAI-PMH compliance for the future, e.g. OCLC?
Absolutely. If we are not already working with your vendor, feel free to put them in touch with us or talk to me and let me know who they are, and I will happily have a chat with them.
Has there been any reflections on the impacts of the improved records, i.e. more ILLs or better results?
That is a bit of a harder one to answer. Anecdotally, we have been noticing fewer bad merges coming in, but it is kind of hard to exactly verify that. We haven't had a chance to deep dive into that side of things yet.
How many libraries do not contribute to the national collection, and how incomplete is the ANBD?
That one, I'm not actually sure I can answer, I'm sorry. I would probably need to hit up some of my colleagues in another area for that one. I really work on the data side.
How has this process worked with local consortia? I know that there's a lot of libraries are working together on a shared catalogue, so how does that work for individual holdings?
Yeah, so we have got setups for the consortia arrangements. So some of the libraries in the Public Library Victoria group have the shared Cersei Dynex system, so we're able to work with that and separate out their holdings so that each library can get their holdings added specifically. The South Australian Public Libraries Network, same sort of setup, so we have effectively one harvest where we actually pull in all the holdings for all of those libraries and they get added on for the correct organisations. So we can definitely handle that.
That's it for questions, and my library is one of the Public Libraries Victoria libraries that was involved. We hadn't updated our records to National Library for like forever, so we are very appreciative of this project. So will you please join me in thanking Cameron for his presentation.